So hopefully everybody is able to see the front slide of my PowerPoint presentation. Your screen should show member monthly refresher training, applying food safety culture from the top down. If you can see it in that Q&A chat box, go ahead and drop me either a thumbs up or an emoji or just a simple yes. Just let me know that everybody's with me and that you can see the screen. So some of you have met me, some of you have not. Give you a brief history into who I am and how I got here. So the layers of my food safety journey really started back in high school. I grew up in Kingsburg, California, really small Swedish village right smack dab in the middle of the Central Valley. I was in FFA all 4 years. I showed boar goats at the Big Fresno Fair. I competed in speech competitions, record bookkeeping competition. I also was in the FFA state band, which was a lot of fun for me. So I loved FFA and agriculture so much. I thought I wanted to be a high school ag teacher or an ag advisor. So I actually went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo for my degree, a BS in ag science. While there, I was a part of our ag ambassadors program. So we were able to travel around California, visiting trade shows, talking to potential students. We also worked with alumni groups. So we gave tours of the different units on our Cal Poly campus. This was with our cattle unit. I was part of a halter breaking unit, which was really interesting. Here was our animal science course. This particular day was administering vaccines prior to castration, kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity for myself. I was a concentration in ornamental horticulture, and along with being an ag advisor, of course, comes banquets and benefit dinners. So we did take some event planning courses and centerpiece competitions. A different organization I was a part of was called I Love Farmers, They Feed My Soul. This was our campaign on campus to advocate for food and fiber producers to help our diverse body of students understand that they don't have to be farmers to have agriculture matter to them. While in college, I was also the student sales manager at our meat processing facility. So I worked tail to table, everything from the back end of animal husbandry to harvesting, butchering to packaging and sales. I really enjoyed the entire process, getting to understand and respect the product, and also being able to speak with the community about our ethics in food production. Once I graduated, I realized if I was going to be a teacher, that meant going back to high school every day for forever, which sounded like a terrible idea at the time. So instead of becoming a teacher, I decided to enter the industry. I started as the food safety manager with a vertically integrated citrus grower here in the Central Valley of California. While with them, I helped with their Global Gap certification. So that was their annual food safety audit scheme under GFSI was Global Gap. So on an annual basis, I'm the person that would meet with the auditor, right? I was the audit team. We spent 3 whole days together talking about the food safety, the occupational safety, the chemical safety for 7,000 plus acres of citrus, as well as 2 packing houses in 2 different counties within California. After working with them for about 6.5 years, I moved on to a packing house co-op where we handled 12 varieties of citrus for over 400 growers within California. A different business setup, which was unique, came with it its own challenges, its own positive aspects. So again, I was their safety and quality assurance manager. So I was brought on board to develop and implement internal programs that were cohesive amongst all 3 packing house facilities. We had one in the South Central Valley of California and 2 in Southern California, south of the Grapevine. While working from them, Katie with Safe Food Alliance, most of you know her. Katie found me on LinkedIn actually, asked me to join the team. So now I'm able to travel around delivering trainings. We do have a partnership with the California Farm Bureau. So I do travel around working with Brian Little to deliver trainings on our produce safety rule under FSMA. Within Safe Food Alliance, I work with our sister company, Safe Food Certifications, and I do shadow our GMP audits at this time. I also travel around, of course, delivering internal trainings like what I'm doing today with my coworker Zara. So she's the other half of our TNC or training and consulting department. If you don't see me, you might see her at a future training. And I just like to say that on behalf of TNC, we're all very happy that you're joining us this morning. This is a really fun endeavor for us. So Because of the webinar situation, we won't be able to kind of have a round table where everyone introduces themselves. But if you're comfortable, I would love to know a little bit more about you. Go ahead and in the chat box, I'll be able to see your name. So just give me your title, your position with your company. Of course, the company that it is you're working with, your commodity or commodities, or maybe the product or products that you produce, and then some of your favorite foods. And this is not a requirement, it's just kind of a good activity so I can get to know you a little bit better since we're not able to be in person, having that face-to-face conversation. I can see some information dropping into the Q&A box, which I really appreciate. Thank you so much, everyone. While you're doing that, I'll give you some insight into these photos. So that top picture was actually when I was on my travel circuit. I was actually attending a HACCP course, and this was having a chicken schnitzel for the first time up in Santa Rosa. That was absolutely delicious. On the right hand side there, moving clockwise, you'll see some stuffed bacon wrapped dates, one of my favorite tapas plates from a local restaurant here in Fresno where I live. Then we have a banana bread pudding with some of the world's largest mint leaves I think ever found. Absolutely delicious dessert. And then on the left hand side there, we have a nice prosciutto and arugula flatbread pizza with some locally brewed beer from a local brewery that opened up. So those are some of my favorite recent food experiences. And I'll go ahead and read some of your information here. So we have Pablo with Gold River Orchards. Good morning, Pablo. Yes, you work with nuts. You love Thai food and traditional Oaxacan cuisine. So fried grasshoppers and moles. That's very interesting. Thank you so much. Hannah, good morning. Senior Technical Services Manager with Mariana Packing. Of course, you work with dried fruits and pasta. Thank you so much. Abad, I see you're with us also from Mariani. Good morning. Ignacio from Gold River, good morning. Yes, you work with walnuts and anything food. Same here. I love it all. Fantastic. Thank you for those of you that shared. Okay, so getting into the meat of the presentation, right? The real reason that we're here today. So we're going to be talking about applying food safety culture from the top down. Of course, welcome to the webinar. So some course objectives for this, we're really hoping to communicate, of course, the reasons for food safety, the role that culture or food safety culture plays within your company, and hopefully you'll be able to take away from this some proactive, feasible solutions for your company. So reasons for food safety in general, of course, the why. Why do we have food safety? That's because safe food saves lives. So one of the reasons, of course, is to produce a consumable product that is fit for consumption, right? We want our food, our walnuts, our dried fruits to be able to be edible, of course, right? We want our customers to be happy. We want the consumers to be happy. We also want to avoid recalls, right? So avoiding recalls helps to protect our bottom line costs. Okay, so recalls, of course, do cost money for the company involved, but they also cost potentially your name, right? The brand integrity is what we're hoping to protect. So a company that is producing safe to consume food is a company that has, of course, good integrity, and a company that has a brand that is being protected. And if it is already a household name, or we want it to stay that way, if it's not yet well known, if it's a newer company, we hope to, of course, root ourselves into the shelves of consumers around the state, the country, or maybe the world. We also talked about efficiency when it comes to food safety. So a plant or a facility, processing facility, packing house, whatever your preferred terminology there is, an efficient plant is going to be one that has a good food safety culture to it. Because if you are not having to stop for breakdowns as much, if you're not having to stop the line for QA holds or QC holds as much, of course, you're much more efficient. And that ties back into when we talk about protecting the bottom line costs for the company. So thinking about why we need food safety brings us to why do we need food safety culture? That's because most major deficiencies that we find during inspections and audits actually relate back to food safety culture itself. We'll find that maybe managers or certain departments are very adept at food safety concepts, but trying to have those concepts be cohesive and implemented across the entire facility at every tier or level of employment is sometimes the challenge. And that's because culture is not good or bad. It's really how we do things. So you cannot inherently say that one company really just has a bad food safety culture. Maybe it's more so that it just needs more support, right? More massaging, more techniques, more buy-in from the employees, or maybe even from management. Because even with the right culture, non-conformities can occur, right? Maybe we have equipment failures. Maybe we talk about the human factor, right? Humans, of course, make mistakes. So even with good, strong food safety culture, the right culture, of course, non-conformities can occur, but a weak food safety culture can lead to catastrophe. And that plays out in the story of the Peanut Corporation of America. If you've taken HACCP 101 from me before, you know this story. We do tell it quite often, but that's because it is a great indication of how food safety culture plays into the effects of a recall. So with PCA, or Peanut Corporation of America, they had a holy roof. And I don't mean religious. I'm talking about they had holes in the roof of their processing facility. When birds flew over their building, birds, of course, did what birds do, dropped their feces onto the roof. When it rained, that feces then washed into uncovered product on the floor. So not only do we have an issue with structural integrity here, we also had an issue with how they were handling and storing their their ready to eat product. So with their product, they now had a visible contamination of fecal matter. They saw the visible contamination and they said, we know we need to test our product. We're going to send it out for testing. Of course, that product came back positive for salmonella, right? A biological hazard, one of those pathogens that we associate with fecal matter, especially from birds. So the product was testing positive for salmonella. They kept sending samples out. The samples kept coming back positive, positive, positive. Eventually, they had one sample come back from a different lab that did test negative, and they said, fantastic, that's good enough for us. We're going to ship it anyway. So those 3 words, ship it anyway, were really the nail in the proverbial coffin of this company. But also the fallout of their choices, unfortunately, where 714 individuals fell ill and 9 did pass away. So we had 9 individuals that lost their life directly related to the choices that employees, and not just floor employees, but you'll see management and upper management made at Peanut Corporation of America. So it impacted the company itself, it impacted the consumers. It also impacted 200 other companies. And that's because Peanut Corporation of America had a very complex supply chain. Okay, so they produced products that were ingredients in other products. They also produced ready-to-eat products. So not only was their company impacted, 200 other companies were impacted as well, plus almost 4,000 products all told. So this is one of those dire warning stories that we discuss because it really illustrates how the choices we make at a food processing facility not only impact the consumer themselves, but forward and backwards, right? One step forward, one step back within that stream of our product. And that's because we need to talk about the role that culture plays. Okay, so Peanut Corporation of America had a weak food safety culture. They knew they had visible contamination of their product. They knew their product was testing positive for salmonella. At some point in time within the chain of command, somebody should have been the whistleblower to say, this is not okay. We should not be shipping this product. I need to tell someone. Maybe I need to report it to the FDA or at least the county health department, or I should tell the customers, but nobody did that. So because of that, not only were the owners, so upper management, they were sentenced to spend time in prison, of course, paid a lot of fines, but their food safety manager as well. So she had to spend some time in jail. She also had to pay out some money. I believe she was released and was having to report to a halfway house, which I'm sure is not how she was expecting her life to turn out when she got into the food industry. So that's why our food safety culture really matters. And our culture, of course, is the who, right? The people that work at our company. So this is where we talk about the work family tree. And when we think about our work family tree, maybe we think about our different departments. So we have a food safety department, or maybe at least a food safety professional, right? A manager or coordinator, maybe they have a different title. We have a quality department, or at least a quality individual. So QC or maybe QA or both. Then, of course, we have operations, right? So boots on the ground, the individuals that are operating machinery, that are making decisions when it comes to scheduling, when it comes to lots. And then, of course, maintenance, right? The people that keep the plant running in the off season and during the season. Then we have shipping and receiving, right? So individuals that are shipping the product out of the facility, but they're also receiving raw goods or maybe packaging material. And then, of course, we have sales. But who are we missing? So this is an opportunity for you to prove I haven't put you to sleep yet. Go ahead and drop into the Q&A box who you think is missing from this work family tree. Who did I not mention? Yes, thank you. Upper management, right? So sanitation, thank you for that as well. Great. So our sanitation individuals matter and our upper management matters. So those are going to be yes. And the CEO, senior management, fantastic. Good. Thank you so much. So when we think about that work family tree, it's not just the employees physically on the floor, right? We have our sanitation crew that maybe only comes in at night. Sometimes maybe we don't see them, so we kind of forget to list them out. Of course, they matter. And then, of course, upper management, the owners, the CEOs. So thank you so much for that. My question for all of you when it comes to your company and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to in the chat box. This is more just to get you thinking about maybe a takeaway message or maybe an activity that you'd like to employ within your company. So a question for all of you: do you have an up-to-date family tree for your facility? Right, so it's important that it's up to date. It reflects any new hires, any changes in position or changes in title. Maybe somebody's left the company, maybe somebody has joined the company. Okay, do you have that for your facility? And if you have one for your facility, do you also have one for the company as a whole? Maybe that's the same structure, or maybe that is a different structure. And you don't necessarily have to list out every single employee's name, but just think about departments or think about key titles when it comes to who plays a role in decision making for food safety. So maybe your HACCP team, maybe you have a family tree for that. And remember, if you're going to have multiple facilities, you should think about having a family tree for each of those facilities, just like you maybe have different food safety plans or different HACCP plans for different facilities. Maybe your family tree is going to be different as well. So if you have one, the next question to think about is everyone who works at your company aware of the family tree? And do they have access to it? Maybe this isn't something you necessarily need to post on the floor for every employee to see, but it might be a good idea to discuss it either at onboarding, during preseason training, start of season training, or during the hiring process. So at least the employees understand the structure to the company and they have more of that holistic, wide-eyed approach to working at your facility. They don't just have to think about going up to the workstation every day, following the SOP, following GMPs. It's also about that family tree and the structure so they can understand when things are being asked of them, tasks are being given to them, really where that information is coming from. So the who at our facility, right, that plays into our food safety culture, that also plays into the why. Why do we do this? So when upper management, when CEOs, when food safety managers, when they're the ones that understand what's being expected of the company when it comes to regulatory compliance or food safety audit scheme compliance, maybe under GFSI or another type of inspection that's occurring, they can help to spread that information down the family tree, right? A good positive trickle down effect to spread the information so that way any employee at any level within the family tree can understand the why behind what they're doing. Which brings us to proactive, feasible solutions. So how do we accomplish a strong food safety culture at work? We can talk about the modes of persuasion. So ethos, pathos, and logos are considered modes of persuasion. This is a concept that was published by Aristotle, right? So he was a well-known Greek philosopher. He authored a writing called Rhetoric. And within Rhetoric, he defines ethos, pathos, and logos. And he talks about how these are the three modes of persuasion. So if you're going to be an author and you're writing a story, or maybe you're a teacher trying to discuss something with your students, or a trainer delivering a webinar, ethos, pathos, and logos play into that. The same can be said within your facility when you're delivering a training to your employees, or if you're hosting a meeting where you have upper management involved. So we'll talk about ethos first. This is the ethical persuasion. So ethos is ethical. So the ethical persuasion, of course, is right versus wrong. So food safety is simply doing the right thing for our customers and our consumers. Simply put, there should be no compromise. If you communicate this to your employees, it helps to reinforce your company's commitment to doing good business. Again, the right thing to do is simply to create a product that is fit for consumption. Also, by communicating this to your employees, it can help empower them to make the right choice. If they believe that they're working for a company that is ethical, chances are they're going to feel more empowered to make ethical decisions. So they're going to choose to always wash their hands when they should be. They're going to choose to only wear clean clothes to work that are free from allergens and free from pet hair. They're going to choose to always wear their hairnet and or beard net when it's required, right? When they should be doing it because it's the right thing to do. Then we'll talk about pathos, which is the emotional persuasion. I know P and E, not the same letter, but pathos, right, a Greek term. So pathos is the emotional persuasion. So when you appeal to someone's emotions, you're appealing to their empathy. So maybe you ask your employees, would you feed this food to your family? Okay, based on the choices you make at work today, would you feed this end product to your family? Would you feed it to your grandparents or your children? Right, so grandparents and children fall into those categories of consumers that are considered more susceptible, right? They're more susceptible to biological, chemical, and physical hazards. And so if we talk about feeding our product or our commodities to our families, to the susceptible persons within our family trees, our personal family trees, hopefully the employees are feeling more of that emotional tie to the work they're doing, so that way showing up to work is more than just earning a paycheck. You can see here is a great example from our friends at Michelin Tire, right? They used a cute little chubby baby for their tire sales ad. Now, babies and automobiles really have nothing in common, but they're trying to appeal to your emotions here by saying Michelin because so much is riding on your tires. So when you see that, most likely you're going to feel that tug at your heart where you say, oh my goodness, you're right. I'm carrying my baby with me, right? My kids are in the car. I should have good, safe tires on my vehicle. I should probably go buy a new set from Michelin. So this is that pathos or the emotional persuasion. Next up in our pyramid of modes of persuasion is going to be logos. This is the logical persuasion. So think Spock, right? Our logical friend from Star Trek. So from a logical perspective, food safety impacts the bottom line of the company. It could also cost you your job. Think about Peanut Corporation of America. So it costs the job of the owner, the food safety managers, and if a company gets shut down, that means it would cost the employees their jobs as well. There can also be legal consequences. So we talk about sometimes when we talk about documentation and record keeping requirements, we talk about being subpoenaed, right? So there's a legal requirement to deliver documents in the event of an inspection or an audit. The same can be said for food safety in general. There can be legal consequences for choices that are made when it comes to adulterating product or producing a product that is unfit for consumption. We can also talk about the cost of a recall, right? So I mentioned how food safety impacts the bottom line of a company. That's because the average cost of a recall is about $30 million. That includes product disposal, business interruptions, right? If you're not running your lines, you're not going to be able to make any money. It also takes into account customer reimbursements. So maybe you have direct customers, maybe you have direct to consumer. Anywhere along that chain, you may be held liable for reimbursements for that product. Then, of course, we have the cost of transportation. So transporting the product to disposal sites or back to your facility to be disposed of. The cost of the investigation itself. So paying for hotel, for meals, for travel costs, for the individuals that are conducting the inspection. So all told, on average, $30 million within the food industry. Then we also talk about brand integrity, right? So we ask ourselves, what's in a name? We care about the name of the company. We want the company to continue being supported by consumers. To do that, we have to support that brand, protect the brand name by making good food safety related choices within the company. So brand and market recalls are far larger than recall costs themselves. That comes from Survey Respondent. And this is when we think about the effects of a recall, it's really hard to quantify exactly how much that's going to impact the company. Maybe if there's a small recall or a voluntary recall, maybe next week there's going to be a different recall from a different company and a different commodity. And that is going to be pushed to the forefront of consumers' minds. So maybe you kind of, quote, get off easy a little bit, but you don't want to take that chance, right? You don't want to rely on somebody else's failures just to say, well, we got away easy this time, it was okay. It's best to just stay out of the recall business altogether. Even if you weren't to get, quote, lucky, and you did have a larger recall, okay, think about that domino effect or the snowball effect. If you have a small problem that grows into a larger problem, you start to have to add either SKUs or products to a recall. It grows larger and larger. Now you've really ruined your reputation. That's because it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. So if we think about it from that perspective, maybe we'll do things differently when we make those choices. I think that maybe Aristotle missed one, and that is recognition. So the persuasion of recognition or the supportive persuasion. It's because we want to motivate and reinforce the concepts of food safety within our facilities. So maybe we have rewards that we deliver out when employees or departments have earned them. Do you have KPIs at your company? Okay, so KPIs are key performance indicators. This is a term that is used to be used more so in office type business jobs, but this concept has really spread out into the world of agriculture and into our industry. So KPIs or key performance indicators are going to be something that you define. Maybe you have a little bit of an issue with one of your lines and you're consistently having to recall product. So maybe you set a KPI of a reduction of recalls of 5% over the next fiscal year and a total of 10% over the next 2 fiscal years. So you've given yourself quantifiable goals that you want to meet, and they are related to food safety. Once you have those food safety related KPIs, you should, of course, communicate those goals to your employees. So to your managers, to your supervisors, and to your floor employees and all of those departments we talked about, right? Maintenance, shipping and receiving, sales, of course, sanitation, operations, and let them know there's going to be a reward. So if we meet a certain KPI, maybe you're able to provide lunch for the entire department or a certain line of employees, or maybe the whole company, right? That's a good investment. We talk about costs versus benefits when it comes to motivation, when it comes to KPIs. This is a good investment. Your employees will feel supported. They will feel rewarded for the good choices that they've made, for really contributing to that food safety culture. Maybe you make a food safety example of the month. This costs far less money than trying to feed 200, 300, or 400 people. Maybe you simply take their picture, right? Maybe you have a wall where you feature the food safety example of the month, or if that feels a little too intrusive to some people, they don't want the full spotlight, maybe you start to write a really simple newsletter that gets delivered into paychecks once a month. So it takes maybe 30 minutes to write something like that. You're able to fold it up, have accounting or HR pop those into everybody's paycheck envelopes, maybe just once a month. And that's how you're able to communicate your KPIs, what your goals are, and how their choices at work are directly impacting those goals. Maybe just a simple thank you is enough for some employees. They just want to know that somebody has noticed that they've done the right thing. So maybe you can say, hey, Hannah, thank you so much for wearing your hairnet every single time I've seen you this month. Not only are you wearing, or this week or this day, you're not only are you wearing it, you're wearing it properly. I really appreciate that. Well done. Thank you so much for positively contributing to the food safety aspect of our product. Maybe you invest a little bit in company swag. I don't know anybody who doesn't love a free hat. I think that's officially a currency within the world of agriculture. Okay, so swag is a great thing to look into. Maybe you were able to give out hats like a mesh hat or a trucker hat, or maybe you're able to just do a simple t-shirt that has the company logo, maybe the year on the sleeve or on the back. So the employee really feels like you've invested in them, and they're in turn going to want to invest in the company through the choices they're making. Then we talk about reinforcements. We have positive reinforcement when it comes to rewards. Then, of course, there's the disciplinary process. It's not fun to talk about, but it's just as important as positive reinforcement. So that disciplinary process, it has to be consistent. Every single person within the company, doesn't matter where within that family tree that they fall, they need to be held accountable when it comes to your food safety expectations. So everybody on the floor needs to be wearing the appropriate PPE per your GMPs. They need to be following proper GMPs. Everybody is expected to, of course, wash their hands. Everybody is expected to maybe wear closed-toed shoes or wear long pants. And yes, this goes for sales as well, right? So even if we have internal employees that are visiting from other departments, it needs to be communicated to them that they are expected to follow the same rules as any visitor, inspector, or auditor to the facility, because that will help to reinforce to the floor employees that the rules don't just apply to them, the floor employee. The rules apply to everyone within the facility, because anybody who walks through those doors has the potential to impact the food safety nature of the product for the positive and for the negative. So, another polling question for all of you. This is one I would love to hear feedback on. I also have some answers and maybe questions that have backlogged in the Q&A chat, so it'll give me a chance to check on those. So if you don't mind, if you feel comfortable sharing with me and with all of us, feel free to feel free to answer the question, how do you promote and support food safety culture currently? So within your company, what are some things that you're currently doing to promote and support food safety culture? Maybe there's some of the same as what I shared on the slide, or maybe they're different, which I would love to see. I love hearing about new ideas and new ways that we're working towards this within the community. Awesome. I see a lot of you were answering yes to that food safety work family tree that I mentioned earlier. One person shared that it's part of their policies, which I love to see. So maybe part of your food safety policy, part of your HACCP plan, which is wonderful, because if you did not write it down, it did not happen. If you're going to write it down, make sure that you're doing it, making sure that you're following through on it. Sergio shared that it is a public document available to all employees, which is fantastic to hear. Hannah says that they post it. I think that's a great way to communicate. I really appreciate that. Abad shared they have food safety bulletins. That's wonderful, Abad. Thank you so much for that. So your food safety bulletins are those physical bulletin boards where you're posting physical posters, or do you have digital bulletins that you're sending out to your employees? I'd love to hear your response. Okay, from Sergio, visual management, signage, KPIs. Excellent. So I love that visual cue. So when we talk about trainings, we talk about trying to change up how we communicate information. Is it verbal? Is it audio? Is it visual? Are we delivering it in the language our employees speak? Or are we able to use pictures so we don't have to have everything printed out maybe 2 or 3 or 5 different times, right? It can save on space, but still deliver that important message, which is wonderful to hear. Thank you so much. So from ISA, they say we have a food safety board and love to do our employee shout outs. Fantastic. Yes. So maybe a simple employee shout out is a wonderful opportunity. If you have tailgate meetings, if you have a monthly training, maybe you call it that instead, or maybe you have quarterly trainings. That's a great way to give those employee shout outs. Maybe you meet as often as daily pre-op. That's another opportunity to give a shout out. Thank you so much, ISA, for sharing that. Employee recognition. Thank you, Ruby. So how do you recognize your employees? Are you able to give them gifts? Do you give them verbal recognition? How is it that you're currently recognizing them? Hannah, so food safety awareness board and newsletter, fantastic. Recognition, like a $5 Starbucks card, excellent. I love to hear that. I'm the kind of person, right? Maybe some of you are familiar with the marketing. What would you do for a Klondike bar? I will do anything for a cup of coffee, a good cup of coffee. So that is wonderful to hear. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Abad, you said both, fantastic. I love that as well. Thank you. And Hannah, both email and physical postings reviewed in department meetings. Great, fantastic. So when you're having those departmental meetings, that's another fantastic opportunity to hear from the bottom up and the top down, so upstream and downstream within the company, where you talk about those physical postings, you have the reviews, and you can also discuss what goes into emails. Wonderful. Thank you. Ruby says we give gift cards and employee lunches. Excellent. Thank you so much, Ruby. Yes, everybody loves a free lunch. Everybody loves a good gift card, and something as simple as $5 or $10 can really just help somebody show that you're recognizing them and that you're thankful for the choices they're making. So thank you so much, everybody, for sharing. I love to hear from all of you, and it sounds like you're currently working towards that strong, supportive food safety culture, which is fantastic. So this one, you don't necessarily have to answer in the chat box. It was more so just to kind of get you thinking. I heard, of course, from a lot of you, you're doing wonderful things, but is there anything that you might try to do differently? Or maybe today, with what we've heard from our fellow employees within the food production industry, maybe there's something different somebody else is doing that you would like to try. Again, you don't have to share if you don't want to, but just something to think about as more of a takeaway message. And that's it. That's all I have for you today officially when it comes to supporting and empowering food safety culture from the top down. But I would love to hear any questions, any feedback, and of course, anything that you would either do differently within your company or anything that maybe I missed that you'd like me to touch on. And go ahead and just drop that. I'm going to leave the chat box open. I'll stop sharing my screen for now, and I'll leave it open. So any questions? Anything you heard someone else is doing that you'd like to start doing? Anything I didn't touch on when it comes to food safety culture? Trying to have that support from the top down? I'll give it another minute. And if I don't hear from anybody, I'll just ask you after that time to just drop something in the Q&A box to let me know that you don't have questions, you don't have anything else that you'd like to be or have discussed, and we can call it a day, and I'll wish you a happy Friday. So like I said, give it another minute or two. Just let me know if there's anything else you'd like me to touch on, any questions you have, anything you'd like clarity on. Awesome. So no questions. Thank you so much. You're very welcome. I appreciate you joining the presentation today. As I mentioned at the beginning, this presentation was recorded. You're safe from being on camera. Okay, it's a webinar, not a meeting. But everything that I said is part of that recording. So your questions, your answers, your input, all of that is part of it, which we really appreciate. So we do save this as a company. I believe our communications department is planning on either distributing or at least saving these for distribution. So if you have questions about that, if you think this is helpful for your company, let us know. And this is something that we can talk about maybe sharing with you that you can then play back within your company, maybe at one of your monthly or quarterly meetings. Awesome. I don't think anybody has any extra questions or input. So I'll just go ahead and say thank you again for joining me. I hope all of you have a wonderful rest of your Friday, a successful rest of your week, your month, your quarter, your year. And hopefully I'll see you again in the future for another meeting, a training, or maybe for one of your DFA member audits. Thank you, Sherry. I really appreciate it. So I'll go ahead, I'll stay on the line just in case anybody thinks of something. If you're done with the presentation, you'd like to get on with your day, go ahead and log out of the webinar. I'll wait until everybody has left before I close it out.